Hello, everybody. We are live now, and our guest today is Miss Aishwarya Pandit. She is Associate Professor at Jindal Law School, and she's here to discuss her latest product with her, which is a book titled Claiming Citizenship and Nation. Hi, Aishwarya, and welcome to BW Business World.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the team for giving me an opportunity to kind of talk about my book.
Hi, firstly, congratulations on writing the book and getting it out. It is, of course, a seminal achievement on its own. So, with that, let's dive just headfirst into the questions. So, why do you think we need a book on citizenship and nation and the associated topics now? Because this is an issue which has been going on since independence and even pre-independence, when people have been looking to define themselves as a nation and also as a country. What is the USP of your book?
The USP of my book is that it looks at a lot of, I think every author finds that their book has some sort of USP. That's why they end up writing it. But I feel my book has a story to tell in terms of certain questions about citizenship and Muslim politics, in particularly North India and Uttar Pradesh, that I look at, and also look at some of the key themes and revisit some of the key conclusions which have kind of remained a constant, and people have kind of tried to understand where are we in our democracy, and where are we situated, and in that sense, it becomes really, really relevant because it talks about electoral politics. It talks a great deal about the transition from partition and independence. And much of the earlier work that we have seen largely, which is very important work on the subject, mainly talks about in terms of independence and the creation of the new nation state. But nobody really talks about the partition and its impact on the larger public. And much of the discussion about independence and partition and those very eventful, important years have been limited to people at the top, and we don't know what is the situation on the ground level and what is happening once we transition into a nation state from subjecthood of our colonial masters. So in that sense, it is very, very important that we need to look at these areas which have been ignored or have been kind of not looked at in detail.
It looks like you're talking about a subtopic when we talk about the idea of a nationhood. So when you were writing this on this particular topic, who was the target audience that you had in mind?
My target audience, usually for books such as this, which are really involving a lot of research, which I did while doing my PhD. But the target audience, as far as my book is concerned, is really a lot. It's a wide range of people. You have students who would be interested in my book, journalists, political commentators, people from different avenues who would like to understand that time period that I'm looking at, 1947 to 1986. So there is a whole different lot of people that is my audience as far as this book is concerned. It is historians, it is politicians, it is people who are political commentators who like to understand and historicize certain things, especially when elections happen and people try to make sense of it, especially in the recently concluded UP elections. People are trying to make sense of how the BJP is continuing to be in power, how did it get a massive mandate even for the second time, explain what works for it and what not, why the Bharatiya Janata Party and its ideology has such a wide footprint, national footprint now. So to make sense of those things, you need to go back in history, and that's why my book is important. So that's
okay. So we have a wide audience when it comes to the recipients of this book, which is a good thing because we need everybody to have a broader perspective when it comes to the idea of nationhood and whatever else the book is talking about. So let's
Yeah.
just dive into the book now. It has 6 chapters.
Yeah.
And which is your favorite chapter, personal favorite, and why?
My favorite chapter is the unmaking and making of the Congress heartland, because it's the first chapter of the book. It is the foundational chapter as far as the book is concerned. You really kind of get an insight into what led to the decline of Congress in Uttar Pradesh and particularly North India. And that is an interesting theme that historians, political scientists, and journalists have always wondered about. I've now grown tired of these questions about Muslim politics, Congress politics. Why is Congress being reduced to a very minute player or a peripheral player as far as UP is concerned? And you again need to go back in history to understand where did the Congress stand and where it started from. So it basically, this chapter is my favorite because it tells you how the Congress started on a very strong footing in UP. It had the halo of independence around it, that it was the party that got you independence. It was a party which was endorsed by Jawaharlal Nehru, and Nehru at that point of time, his popularity was really immense. And he was a popular leader, not only in India, but also in the wider world, because he was seen as a liberal. He was seen as someone who had served time in jail, and he had made innumerable sacrifices to the nation. From that to now, what we see, the Congress reduced to 2 seats in Uttar Pradesh. It's a long road that the Congress party has covered. So it is some of the answers as to why the Congress has ended up like this is in that chapter. So that's why it's my important and favorite chapter.
Indian elections and Indian political parties are an enigma on in their own right.
Yeah.
So with that thought, let's bring in my colleague, Mr. Rohel Amin, into the conversation. Rohel, over to you.
Thank you, Urvi. And sorry, I was trying to figure out, the connection. There was some issue, but great. I mean, I was reading about the book, and what also struck me was the way you have addressed Muslim politics in a way that how, electoral politics has always mobilized minorities. If I have to ask you, when you look back and I mean to the time that we are in, I mean, how has it panned out in your view, since you've met so much, you've done such an in-depth research? How has this mobilization of electoral minority groups evolved over a period of time?
One of the main things that I'm hoping to achieve by this book is first to shatter the myth that there's nothing that you can say Muslim politics. There's not like one homogeneous community, and there's no one homogeneous way to understand how it operates and how it kind of reacts to certain situations. You'll always hear panelists on TV saying, Muslim politics, or the Muslims do this, or the Muslim identity, and that. It would do a great deal if you try to understand that Muslim politics is not as homogeneous as we try to make it out to be. And a part of this perception and stereotype about Muslim politics has a lot to do with the Congress party, because the Congress party built on this image that the Muslims were a united group, they functioned as solid mass, they voted in a particular format. And that's why when now you see a variation in Muslim voting patterns, people are like, oh my God, why is this? There's a digression from the trend. Why is there a change to begin with? Are the Muslims unhappy with the Congress? But if you read my book, you'll realize as early as 1957 elections, Muslims were already looking for other parties that could offer them things that the Congress was not offering at that point of time. So they were already making alternative choices as early as 1957. So if they're making alternative choices, which in their understanding is the best choice now, I don't know why there is so much confusion, problem associated with that. If the Muslims are voting for the Bharatiya Janata Party, it is not something unusual. It is not a digression from the trend. There were other, and one of the main halabu that is made out of it is that Muslims are voting for parties that are offering security. Whichever party offers security. Well, there are other concerns for Muslims as a community other than security. Security is a concern for almost all of us. But there are other concerns like employment, there are other concerns like food, there are other concerns like other opportunities. So it's like by saying that, oh God, the Muslims are voting for the BJP, we're actually kind of denying the fact that they have that level of consciousness to make that choice. It's the Congress narrative and the Nehruvian narrative that Muslims need hand-holding. Maybe they don't. Maybe they can make their choices themselves.
And this is very significant because the way, it has been portrayed that this is a block, it has been broad brush in a way that it doesn't have further nuances, the Muslim politics, while as you are saying that it has its own different shades within that, Uh, when you write a book, of course, it means a lot of research, meeting people, I want to also understand the backstory of making this book happen, and what all further myths did it kind of, demystify, if I have to use this word, while you got into understanding the minority politics and how it shapes the narrative.
The backstory to the book is always that it's an interesting story. My father always told me from my childhood days was that the road to Delhi is from UP. I think we've grown up hearing that, that if you want to understand which government is going to come to power, you have to understand UP, and then you get a understanding of the entire canvas. So I think my impulse for writing a book such as this, and although I'm from Haryana and focusing on UP, is a lot to do with what my father told us, and my grandfather also told us. You need to understand India through UP because it is a kind of a melting point as far as the civilization is concerned, and as far as it has very important Hindu religious sites, which are very crucial. Kashi, Varanasi, and Ayodhya have an unbroken chain as far as history is concerned. And then began this journey of kind of doing interviews, archival research, and Murthy, talking to a lot of people and trying to write the book and make sense of politics. As I was writing, India was undergoing a transformation in terms of democratic politics. The Bharatiya Janata Party was acquiring a national footprint. So that also, I kind of made sense of what was happening now by looking into what I was trying to write. And it all kind of came together. The last chapter of the book was something which was an addition later, which I made on the advice of Ramchandra Guha, who happened to look at my book proposal for a kind of a fellowship that their organization offers, and he recommended that why stop in 1970s, go all the way up to 1986, and that's where you kind of make that stop. So I think this book is the result of a lot of people contributing to it, apart from me, and giving their insights and giving their viewpoints. I've had friends look at drafts and comment about it. So in that sense also, it's a book is a end product of a lot of people's hard work and inputs.
Right. You also mentioned, before I bring in Urvi for the next question, I want to ask you this. You said, the chapter on making and unmaking of the Congress heartland, is one of your, favorite ones. So what are the important shifts that have taken place in this heartland? How is this heartland now in terms of perceptions, how they perceive identity politics, minority politics? How is it placed now?
The heartland is still the heartland, so that hasn't changed much. It is very much there in terms of its importance and centrality in Indian politics. There is you couldn't emphasize enough because of the large number of members of parliament that Uttar Pradesh contributes to, and also in terms of the size of the state and the population statistics, the caste calculus, and as well as its religious dynamic, which makes it really interesting. But there have been a lot of shifts in terms of minority politics that people have not tried to look at, which I feel are very significant shifts. That minority politics is no longer centered around the Congress party. That is for one. I think the minorities do not see the Congress offering as an alternative or even a vision or an ideology as such. What does the Congress stand for is a question which even congressmen struggle to cope with. What exactly the Congress stands for. Whether it is on the national question or the Muslim question or that. So that is one thing that one needs to look at. And the Congress has this book talks a great deal about the Congress relationship with Muslims and the impact of that relationship on national politics. A large part of that stems from the fact that Muslims were largely disappointed with the Congress, not in pushing Urdu or giving, despite Nehru's secular rhetoric, you see the Congress party under Nehru giving tickets to ex-Muslim League MPs and MLAs in the 1947-57 elections. And you have genuine congressmen writing angry letters to the party high command saying, well, these people were the ones who argued for a two-nation theory, and here you are giving them a ticket just because they so-called, in your perception, have the ability to win elections. And also Nehru, and I've looked at the Jawaharlal Nehru papers, it comes off very interestingly because there is this idea that Nehru was completely committed to secularism, and he would not compromise on these ideals, and he was not going to promote the cause of Hindu nationalists because that would lead to the marginalization of minorities. But the private papers of Nehru reveal to a great extent that Nehru was given into compromise when he knew and gave tickets to leaders who made communal speeches as long as they won elections. So this is at the point which has been bypassed in much of the historical literature. It's not been highlighted. As long as you got the votes, you got the number of seats. They had no problem in giving tickets to leaders who gave communal speeches. So Congress also had its share of bad relationship where that is a concern and that. So it is very interesting how now the Congress says, oh, the minorities are marginalized. Oh, we're giving, other parties are giving tickets to communal leaders. The Congress sense of its own history is somewhere lost when they say something like that. So that is something one needs to realize.
Right, right. Urvi, if you want to ask your next, yes.
Thank you, Ruhil. So my question is, when we talk about these three things called property, rehabilitation, and citizenship, so how do they come together to make an impact on democracy and the Indian election?
See, the concept of property is basically connected to the idea of the mother. Desh, Vatan, Mata are all these kinds of terminologies that you could use interchangeably when describing your property. It's your land, and if you go to the countryside, land is associated with something which is very symbolic. It has a history, it has a culture and a legacy. So we are trying to understand citizenship through the story of land and property, and how people who lost property in the during partition and had to were constantly migrating or on the move, how they were deprived of their property, and what challenges they had to go through. So here what we're trying to say is that property is just not mere a piece of land, but it has other connotations attached to it, which are deeper meanings, and you need to see those. After all, the Property Acts enacted by India and Pakistan led to a lot of people losing out their property and their sense of connect with their land and their region and their village. So property is a significant aspect of this story that one needs to look at, because you can understand how that functions. Here also we look at religious property in the form of Hindu endowments and Muslim endowments, and how endowments played a very important role in making a way for people at a time when government was not forthcoming. in terms of education, providing support for people who were displaced as a result of partition. This a book basically is trying to tell you the story of independence is very important as much as the story of partition and for those who went through it.
And there's a common saying in English that the home is where the heart is. So yes, there is a significant emotional attachment also people have to their property and land. It is just not monetary or political.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to address one more topic which your book speaks about. So there is the Hossainabad, the trust topic that you bring up.
Yeah.
And you take up the idea of Shia heartland along with it. So can you elaborate on that?
The trust is what I'm trying to say through that chapter is that trust is a very central fountainhead in the in terms of Shia life and property in Uttar Pradesh, because the trust provides and also in North India in particular, because the trust provides support in terms of the Muharram processions. And the commemoration of Hassan and Hussein and their martyrdom. So the trust provided the very much needed resources which were not available at that point of time to people and Shias who needed help as far as higher education was concerned, or renting out shops, or starting a business, or even supporting families by giving out some sort of monthly stipend. So the trust acquired a centrality in terms of not only in the terms of the structures it held on, but also it was through the trust that people continue to find some association with Lucknow's Nawabi legacy. Even now, if you see, you go to Lucknow and the area around Hazrat Ganj, and if you move forward towards the Imambadas, that's a very strong cultural connect that you go and you see and you relive that Nawabi legacy when you go that. I met a lot of families there who claimed that they were connected to the Nawab's family and extended family by marriage or by kinship and other things. It is very strange. An institution which was started by the Nawabs of Awadh continues to find a relevance even today for people. It could be a symbolic relevance, it could be an economic relevance, it could also be a socio-logical relevance. The trust is a very active player in the Muharram processions. And you all know that Muharram is a very important event in the calendar of Lucknow for the Shias. In Lucknow, Amroha, and the areas around Lucknow. So the trust provides financial support as well as other support in ensuring that Muharram continues to be celebrated in the same manner that was celebrated probably in the 50s, 60s with the same amount of pageantry and pomp. So that is the whole idea behind it.
Yes, there's of course a strong cultural connect with everything we do in life, especially when it comes to traditional festivals. Yeah. So with that, Ruhail, I would like to hand over the discussion to you now.
So, there's another part, it's more of like your understanding of this subject, a lot of parts in UP, as is suggested, are demographically dominant. Muslims dominate those places. Yeah. Various constituencies. The larger national narrative is Muslims are seen in a certain way, like they're seen as, that can be a minority that can be used for electoral gains, all of that. But in places where they are in dominance, what is the mindset like? I mean, do they align according to you easily with the broader narrative, or do they push for their own, the uniform civil code? How do they view such bigger issues where they are dominant according to you, just for the understanding of our viewers?
So I think there are different issues that unite a cross section of Muslims in a kind of areas, even in areas where they're demographically significant. If that's what one thing that one needs to do is to unpack the whole idea of Muslim politics. if all Muslims in different part of the country were moving through a common agenda and moving through a very homogeneous, were an homogeneous entity, then that would definitely ensure that Asadun Owaisi would win elections in UP as handsomely as he would win in Telangana and Hyderabad. Why has he not been able to make a kind of a success of his electoral strategy? If you see Bihar, you see UP, there's consistently been a rejection of Asadun Owaisi, and a large part of it has to do is that UP Muslims' concerns are not the concerns of a Muslim living in Hyderabad, and vice versa, as well as concerns of Muslims living in Bihar are completely local and regional in comparison to that. So Asadun Owaisi or the AIMIM is when it comes and it tries to offer an alternative, it's not an alternative that they identify with. That is why that alternative is not readily taken. With respect to things like the UCC or that, a large what you can see in a number of constituencies with the recently concluded state elections, it is becoming clearer that some sections of Muslims have voted for the BJP, and I have still to look at the data in detail, but a large part of it is claimed in response to the abolition of triple talaq. So it is not that we do not respond to certain issues. It's about political parties who have made certain issues as Muslim issues. Like UCC is only a Muslim issue, or for that matter, Urdu is only a Muslim issue. Please, I would strongly urge people to actually go out and see how many Muslims in UP actually converse in Urdu. So if you look at the statistic, it is not much in comparison to Bihar, where you have a substantial Urdu-speaking population. So for people and political parties to say that Urdu is a UP Muslim issue is a problematic assumption, because the numbers simply don't stand up. There are simply much more Urdu-speaking public in Bihar in comparison to Uttar Pradesh, where apparently it is a second language and people want it to be a second language or declared by the state government to a second language. People do, Muslims like everyone else wants to take advantage of the new avenues for education. They want to be moving into private sphere as well as the government sphere. And they do not want to be left out by this trope of Muslim politics or a Muslim identity. They don't want to be bogged down by it. It's not something that should stunt their growth. Please understand, if you want to understand Muslim politics, one thing you need to understand is that Muslims are like every other else. If you only saw them through their Muslim identity, that would be problematic. Please see them as everyday people who are looking for a good job, good quality education, good employment prospects, and stuff like that. So unnecessarily focus on certain stereotypes, a large part of it which have been propagated by the Congress, has led to this perception in popular media that Muslim concerns are about language, Urdu, this, that. But their concerns keep changing, you know. It's not like their concerns have remained constant from the last 50 years. They are talking about the same thing. They're also evolving as the society is evolving and a technological revolution is taking place. Everyone has a mobile phone and they are expressing themselves. So please do not assume that the rest of the world operates in a certain way and Muslims operate in a certain way. And that's largely a perception put forward by the Congress party that, oh, they need protection, oh, we need to handhold them. And that's the problem.
So you're saying that none of those things are, occupying the mind share of the Muslim population. But what are the broader, what do the, in your understanding and in your research, so what is the Muslim minorities' major, what you call concerns or things that they really want in your view? Because I mean, what the larger, mainstream media says is a certain thing that we all aware of. But what is your understanding as an author, as a researcher? How do you how do you view it? How do you see this?
Now, I'll take you back to my book again. In chapter 2, it talks about from 1957 onwards, when the campaign for the 1957 election began. A large part of the Muslim press, and these were papers like Al Jamiyat and other papers which were there, the Urdu press, were talking about the fact that Muslims wanted jobs at that point of time. They wanted to be admitted into the police force in conjunction with their population numbers, in the army, and they felt, and in the IAS and administrative services and services of the government of India. And they were unhappy at the fact that despite several efforts, they had been unsuccessful in getting employment, even though the Congress government had sounded very sympathetic to their concerns. So there is an extract in my book which actually says that Muslims were being used as mere vote banks by the Congress party. Rather, what they wanted was representation in the assembly as members of parliament, a voice as members in leading positions in organizations which were there, like the army, the police forces, the administrative services, in conjunction with their numbers. And that is a concern which has remained constant even now, that Muslims want a share in representation. They want a share in terms of being represented in some of the major elite services in the country, and these remain the constant concerns. This other concerns were also had to do with the fact that they were talking about property, that many of them had lost out during partition. They wanted the property restored to them. They wanted more tickets being given out to Muslim leaders and Muslim candidates, so that they would be represented. They wanted Waqf boards and their mismanagements to be sorted out, because the mismanagement of the Waqf board was one of the first concerns, because Waqf boards also gave out a lot of, in terms of support to poor and destitute Muslims and women who were either widowed or divorced. So the concerns were real concerns of every day. I'm not saying that there weren't concerns. There were also concerns about the language and the condition of Urdu, and how that could be reading in Urdu could be encouraged at the primary and secondary stage. So these concerns have remained constant even now. The representation of Muslims in the parliament or the assembly, or in key positions, is something which is missing. There is tokenism, and Congress Muslims at that point of time were called show boys by the Jamaat Islami, that they are merely show pieces. They do not speak for the community, or they do not kind of advocate for the community enough. They are there as showpieces, and that is one of the main tragedies of the entire story.
Dr. Batra is here, and thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aishwarya Pandit, for joining us for this BW dialogue. Rohit has already asked you some questions.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, if you look at what you've shared in the book, can you tell us what do you expect to happen in the future in terms of where is the politics headed? You talked about consolidation of Hindus, you talked about the Hindu-Muslim divide and its impact on electoral politics, its linkages with property, with democracy. What are the future predictions that you can make? If not predictions, the trends you see becoming bigger?
I think the consolidation of the idea of Hindu is something which is going to remain a constant. It's already consolidated to a certain extent, but it will be consolidated even further as we move on. And that's a trend which is, I really can't put a date to it when it is going to like kind of stabilize, but it's something that is going to be on the upswing. The second aspect is that it is better that if you want to get a better understanding of Muslim politics, we start unpacking it from how it has different aspects to it, and how each aspect can be studied in its on its own and not like a stereotype. We need to unpack a large number of stereotypes also with respect to Muslims in order to understand how the community votes and what are their main concerns. We also need to understand in terms of that this downward swing of the Congress party is going to continue for a considerable period of time, because the Congress party is not the Congress party that it was in the 50s. That party in which state units were actually powerful. They could write angry letters to the central AICC and say, "Don't interfere in the state PCCs. We're going to elect our own CLP leader. We're going to have our own chief minister. The MLAs are going to decide." The high command culture was there, and it was something that was started by Nehru. But now it is become more pronounced. The PCCs are basically powerless. At that point of time, if Govind Ballabh Pant, the Chief Minister of UP, or Purushottam Das Tandon, an important leader of the Congress party of UP, did not like Nehru's policies, they shot off angry letters to Nehru saying that this was compromising the constitution of the AICC and the PCC, and the PCC was an independent body which should be allowed to function. You do not get leaders like that now, who are questioning the central stance of the AICC, and leaders like Pant and Tandon were mass leaders at that point of time. Congress doesn't even have mass leaders, which is another trend of the Congress which is going to continue.
So you said two key things. One, you said that the Congress does not have strong local leaders in states. And one of the reasons it doesn't happen is because you don't nurture them. You don't let such leaders come forward who are independent. And you are saying that because of that, the downward spiral of the Congress will continue. And second, you are saying is clearly that Congress does not have mass leaders at a national level as well as state level who can pull in votes, if I may paraphrase what you're saying. Now, let me also ask you about, we're a business and economy platform. The UP elections just got over. And when you talk to some of the voters, they say, even Muslim, they say, I was talking to my driver last night, and he said some of the Muslims voted because they got, in the pandemic, they got food, they got ration. And they're happy with what they're getting in terms of last mile delivery, if I may put it like this.
Yes.
Now, tell me how much of these social economic measures that the government has taken have also helped wean away Muslims to the BJP?
I was telling Rohil the same thing just before you joined in, that we need to understand the Muslim voter as a voter, apart from being a Muslim. He also has multiple identities, and how we need to unpack that. Being a Muslim is one of the very many identities. Now, all those people who say, well, you'll often hear people of the opposition party saying, the government gave out freebies, gave free rations, and people got swayed by it. My problem is with the use of the word sway. When you are sitting in a very privileged position, you can use the word sway with a very much of an ease that the voters just get swayed. It does two things which are entirely wrong. It denies the fact that the voter is conscious of making the right choices. It is something similar to what Nehru used to say, that we need to handhold this nation, which is just one independence, and take them on the path of civilization. Or he had a very paternalistic attitude towards his countrymen, that I am the one who's going to take you on the path, and you'll probably, you need guidance and stuff like that. Similar is the discussion now, is that the voters are actually taken away and overawed with this distribution of rations and other facilities that the and cylinders and other things that the government is offering. For a person who struggles to make ends meet and the pandemic hitting them hard, those rations, free rations, are a breath of fresh air, because that is something that they don't have to bother about. So that has obviously played a huge role. It shows that the government is conscious of the concerns of an average person, and it reflects in that they know what their voter wants. So that is what a political party ought to know. They know how they're going to vote. They know what are the concerns. Nobody can deny that the pandemic has hit communities really hard, and especially people who are in the unskilled sector. So if you had to not worry about your 2 square meals, I think this day in the life of an unskilled worker is pretty much sorted. If he doesn't have to worry about the food and rations for himself and his extended family, then he can worry about other things like finding a job. But unless and until you don't have basic food to feed yourself, how are you going to kind of make ends meet, and your life will become even more miserable, plus the pandemic. And it is something which is completely unexpected. So I think we need to give some credit to the voter, who is very conscious at the village level. They are debating, and in UP and in Bihar, the pan shop, the local chai shop, the local pakoda shop is the place where you have X amount of discussion about politics. So they're probably more politically informed than we are, and we need to give credit to them and respect their choices when they make them.
Absolutely. Now, let me also move into one more area which you bring up, is property.
Yeah.
Property rights.
Yeah.
And I'll bring another angle of triple talaq.
Yeah.
Within this regime, the triple talaq came, and it is also said that in the UP elections that just got concluded, the women voters, the Muslim women voters, voted a lot for BJP. At least that's what's being analyzed. Tell me, how is triple talaq, the property rights, all that played out in the advantage of BJP, and how is it likely to play out in the future?
See, where the property issue is concerned, we all have to agree that from the 50s, 60s onwards, the mismanagement of Muslim religious endowments is a concern. The Waqf boards are badly managed. Their accounts are not in proper shape. There's a lot of mismanagement and fraudulent means to acquire property. A lot of property is in qabza. It's been taken over and has been kind of encroached upon by realtors or private individuals and stuff like that. So when the government steps in and looks into the mismanagement of Waqf, it is a direct concern to the Muslims, because Waqf income supports destitute Muslim families, divorced women, poor children, and provides for their tuition, provides for their education, and that. And if there is a mismanagement of the funds of the Waqf, that the Waqf is spending far more than it's earning, then obviously that money is not there. That money is dried up. And how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the encroachment of property which belongs to Waqf by different private individuals, which has been allowed to go unchecked for so long? So obviously that is a concern, and the Bharatiya Janata Party is claiming that it is going to reform, bring about certain checks and balances as far as the Waqf income and how it is spent. And governments from the British government have instituted mechanism to check the Waqf and their incomes. Similarly, the issue of triple talaq. We all know that the condition of women who are financially dependent on their husbands is and are divorced is pitiable, particularly in the among the Muslims, where It has been seen that a lot of them are dependent on their husbands and have to undergo discrimination on account of that. So getting rid of this concept of triple alaq have given Muslim women an agency, a voice, that this practice shall not be entertained in the future, and this practice shall be discouraged and looked down upon by the state. No other state government has had the wherewithal to actually take up this issue, which was a burning issue concerning the Muslim women, particularly, because it impacted them because they were financially dependent on their husbands. And they had children out of those marriages, and divorce often ended up in these women being at the mercy of their maternal family, who was not ready to accept them, or still staying in the husband's house because they do not have anywhere to go. So the triple talaq and doing away with it has contributed to a larger voice in terms of women. And that is why women voters have made use of the secret ballot, the secrecy associated with it, to kind of vote for the party that they feel speaks for them. And nobody has really brought about, if you look back and look at all the major political parties, no political party has really discussed the condition of Muslim women to this date. The lack of proper healthcare facilities, the lack of proper education, their access to employment opportunities. Nobody talks about the issues concerning Muslim women. We are more concerned about mandir, masjid, and we are more concerned about what the Maulanas are saying. But the Maulanas don't give an opportunity for the Muslim women to say what they want to say. So every time you have a panel on TV, you have Maulanas coming and saying something. We never have Muslim women who are represented. So I think it's time that Muslim women are also given a chance to say what they want to say. And this is why it is reflected.
So let me ask you my last two questions.
Yes.
First question, if you had to give advice to the Congress High Command, in terms of being a good opposition, or having a go at winning elections, what would be the transformation they need to do right from the top and also at the grassroots?
I would say I'm a much smaller entity than the large grand old Congress party to give any advice to it. But I would still say, and I don't think so I'm in a position to kind of give any advice, but there are certain pointers which I'd like to say rather than advice that I could offer as far as the Congress in terms of its own history is concerned. The Congress needs to empower its PCCs, and the central leadership in Delhi needs to allow the PCCs to kind of make decisions for themselves.
Pandit, there is also so much infighting, and there are multiple regional satraps. In Haryana, there are 4 factions. In UP, there are at least 3 leaders that think they should lead UP. And pretty much in every state, there are at least 2 or 3 factions that lay their claim to being the leader of the PCC. In Rajasthan, you saw what happened. You saw what happened in Madhya Pradesh, right? So clearly, the old guard versus the new guard is also an issue.
It is an issue, Dr. Batra, is because you always know at the PCC level, factions are divided because you have the ability to go to Delhi and appeal. So the Delhi factor comes in. And that is why the factions are allowed. This faction is encouraged by Delhi and this faction is not encouraged by Delhi, is in opposition to that. So the earlier days of the Congress, the central interference was very much less. So the factions were even then a constant feature, but they ironed it out and one faction made it over the other faction. Now the factions are simply not given an opportunity because the center always kind of comes in, and you have a president who is performing all presidential functions, but not really a president in the name of it. Those factors come in, and then you have such and such leader who says, I'm close to this leader at the center and that leader at the center. So the center factor is preventing this, is causing this faction thing and getting this, preventing this problem from being sorted.
Okay. So your advice is nurture one leader, put your faith behind that leader, and let that leader take calls for the benefit of the party and the state at the state level. Okay.
Yeah.
My last question to you. If you were BJP, if you were the top leadership of BJP, what you would be thinking from here on? Clearly, UP is a big confidence boost to the morale of the cadre. The cadre is energized. It also then helps you consolidate in Rajya Sabha. As you know, for the first time since 1988, any party has crossed the 100 number in the Rajya Sabha, right? Yeah. And BJP's crossed that. Yeah. So clearly, there is a certain amount of confidence that you go into. There is a groundswell, and confidence is everything in anything. I mean, there's a thin line between confidence and overconfidence. Yes. But the fact is, the BJP has a mass leader in Modi. Yeah. It has schemes that it can showcase that has worked for the bottom of the pyramid, which are inclusive. And it is a very cadre-based party, if you take both the BJP and the RSS. And it has broadened its base in the last few years. So it has brought in new people in. But what you would be thinking from here, because one thing we know about the BJP is that it does not rest on its laurels. An election finishes and they prepare for the next election. Yeah. And so what, if you were the BJP, what would you be thinking now?
I would be thinking of winning my next election. So that's what I would be thinking of.
And doing what? For example, Maharashtra elections are next year. Would you be considering a regime change in Rajasthan, because it is possible to possibly do that? What would you do to be able to make sure that the road to 2024 becomes easy?
I think the BJP has a very strong base in the state. In the states, at the very block level, they are very well organized. So I would say that they have. This is a party which understands the need of a worker and understands the power of a worker and organization skill, and it has used that organization skill effectively to their advantage. Each electoral victory boosts the confidence of its worker, and the BJP knows how to respect its worker in terms of rewards, because you know that a worker, a panna pramukh at the basic level or at a ground level knows that at some day he can aspire to be the chief minister of that particular state, rising up the ranks. So the BJP is offering a promise of power, which no other party at the central level is offering. A promise of power is a very, very important thing.
Motivating thing. I mean, look at Hemant Biswa Sarma. He came into BJP from the Congress. He performed well, and he's now the chief minister of.
Dr. Batra, if he had remained in the Congress, he'd never become chief minister.
Yes. Or you look at Pushkar Dhami. You look at Pushkar Dhami. You look at Pramod Sawant. I mean, these are people.
So the rewards, so the rewards in the BJP.
I'm just supporting what you're saying. I'm just kind of saying that I'm supporting the point that you're making.
Yeah. So I think the rewards in the BJP are something which are very attractive for any worker at the ground level, and the BJP knows how to appeal to them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aishwarya Pandit, for writing this seminal book, and I'm sure it will become an important piece of knowledge, information, and literature for students and people who want to make a sense of how the demographics and the way they are shaping up in the future will determine the future course of democracy in India. We wish you luck in your book, and I'd be happy if you can hold a copy of the book for our readers, if you have a copy handy.
I don't have a copy.
But we'll do more conversations with you on this. We wish you luck in your endeavor, and I recommend the book to all our readers. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Batra, for having me and giving me an opportunity and a platform to kind of talk about my book. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. For those who missed this conversation, you can watch it on the YouTube channel of BW Businessworld, or read an abridged extract in the next issue of BW Businessworld, or on Monday read full text of the interview on businessworld.in. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Another BW Dialogue.
Thank you.